I have never been as excited to talk about Jax than I am right now after finally watching the 7th episode of The Amazing Digital Circus. This episode was a giant experiment in expectations versus twists and reality, and along the way we learned a little bit about Jax while still not having the entire story about him. So let's break down everything we learned about Jax through this episode and what that says about him and where the story is going for the final 2 episodes. Now, as everyone already knew because of the trailers, this episode started with a beach adventure at the suggestion of Bubble. But of course, by the end of the episodes, the characters had been sucked into an adventure trying to escape the Amazing Digital Circus, with the final reveal being that this was all an elaborate trick to try and get the characters to choose being in the circus over returning home, though there doesn't appear to have actually been a way to get out. Now, what's really important about this is that the characters all have a different relationship with the circus and wanting to go home. On the surface, it seems obvious that each of them would want to go home, and Jax even claimed early on in the series that if there was a way out, he would have taken it. But at the end of this episode, it's actually Jax that prevents anyone from leaving when they think that this might actually help them escape, as he's the one who ends up pressing the button allowing them to stay instead of shutting off the game and returning them to their bodies. Now, there are some theories surrounding the idea that Caine actually manipulated Jax in his brain in order to make sure that this ending happened when it looked like they were going to try and escape. But even if that is true, it only seems to be because Jax is the easiest to manipulate in the gang as far as wanting to stay in the circus, as the others seem to want to leave more than Jax does. The episode actually started playing with these ideas during the beach adventure with an interaction between Zubil and Jax. Here, Zubil poured a bucket of water over Jax to get revenge for the many different things that he had done to Zubil, as well as others over the course of the show. Here, Jax claims that Zubil should be off somewhere feeling bad about the ability to customize their body, which is something that Zubil has struggled with as part of their journey with body dysmorphia. Customizing Zubil's body should be something that Zubil wants, and they were implied to have done some customization in real life in the form of tattoos and piercings at the very least. But in the game, the customization actually becomes a reflection of Zubil's inner turmoil. Despite this, Zubil claims in this conversation that they've actually made peace with this, and that maybe being customizable or in the real world having this dysphoria isn't that bad. It's a sign of Zubil and characters like Zubil accepting reality, whether it's the digital reality they are stuck in or the actual reality that they are trying to return to. But the problem is that Jax doesn't seem to feel the same way, and this has ripple effects throughout the episode. Later, when everyone's holding hands while walking towards Caine's office, they discuss how things might be different when they return to reality. Gangle has grown very attached to Zubil in particular, and Gangle was worried that in the real world they might not have the same connection that they do in the digital circus. And while Gangle on some level also wants to return home, now that the possibility has been presented, there's also the idea that staying in the circus is a safe place for them. It's a place they know, and it's a place they know how to navigate, and it's a place where they have each other. Jax, of course, is left out of this, being the only one in the group who's not holding hands with the others, though of course this is his choice. But part of the reason that he feels this way is he doesn't have anyone to go back to in the real world. Earlier in the episode, Zubil and Jax had another conversation about this where Zubil indicates that they do have people waiting for them out in reality. And when Zubil explains this, they act like Jax should have people waiting for him too. This is where we get a really big indication through Jax's reaction that there's no one waiting for him in the real world, that this digital circus game was kind of the perfect escape for him. But it's not just about having people to return to in the real world. What Jax is seeing with the other characters holding their hands is the idea that in the real world they actually will still remain friends. But Jax is likely very aware that this isn't a possibility for him, that even if he starts acting nice to these people outside of the circus, even the ones that got a little close to him like Pomni aren't going to become best friends with him in the real world. And with that in mind, Jax would be the easiest one for Caine to manipulate into pressing the wrong button instead of having everyone escape. Part of this is because of the stress that returning to the real world would actually cause for Jax, but as he makes clear in the episode, his mind has been manipulated by Caine before, and he believes that, at least on some level, Caine is still manipulating his mind in that moment to get him to press that button. Throughout the series, we'd seen instances where Caine seemed to be able to affect the minds of the player characters. This is something that doesn't quite make sense when you consider in the very first episode, Caine claimed that he couldn't affect the people's minds at all. Of course, from the get-go, this didn't seem to be true, however, because this was being explained at the same time that they were explaining to Pomni why she doesn't remember her name, as no one who enters the circus remembers theirs either. On top of that, we saw in later episodes that their minds can be affected by elements put into the game by Caine, such as the stupid sauce, which we see hits Ragatha and makes her act more stupid. In a later episode, meanwhile, everyone gets the right to vote on what to do to the other characters, and they use this as an opportunity to have some fun at Jax's expense and vote for him to become a vegan. This isn't like the other votes in the same episode where they vote to change his costume into a maid outfit, as that's just a change to the body and their clothes, of course, instead of to the actual mind. But with this vote, Jax was actually turned vegan, he said. And when he realized that Caine was able to do that to him, it made him very suspicious of what else Caine might be doing. We now know that Caine is able to affect people's minds, and that Kinger's theory within the show is that Caine is causing everyone to abstract when he tries to do this. The people who abstract tend to be ones who are not invested in the video game experience and who want to escape the circus more than the others. And with that in mind, it makes sense that Caine would want to change the programming in someone's brain to make them like the circus, or at the very least to stop looking for that exit. As Caine says, however, this is actually very dangerous, and because of that, other characters like Kaufmo, Queenie, and even this new character brought up by Kinger named Scratch all seem to have abstracted. Unfortunately for Jax, however, that includes his friend Ribbit and apparently Kaufmo, who he was actually kind of close with. And without them, Jax already has no reason to want to leave the circus. And perhaps even more than a lot of the others, he now has good reason to be actually mad at Caine for what happened to his friends. The problem is that this means Jax may have actually just pressed this button, not out of some manipulation of Caine's, but because he really does fear returning to the real world. And we get tiny hints of why in the flashbacks that Jax experiences before pressing the button. Now, I had a friend immediately text me a really crazy theory after watching the episode that Jax killed someone and went into the forest to bury the body. But that's not really what I'm taking away from the sequence of images. What we do see first is what looks like a suburban neighborhood, the kind of place that Jax would very easily be growing up in. But after the neighborhood, we do see what looks like Jax driving into the woods. It's probably somewhere around here that he would find the headquarters for Caine and Abel, where all of the characters put on the headset and got sucked into the video game. Pomni was indicated in the earlier episodes to have found this place while urban exploring, which is something she did often. Zubil also claimed to do this sometimes, and thus they were probably urban exploring when they found the video game as well. Then there's Ragatha, who said she was a real estate agent and thus was probably listing the property where this video game is running before getting sucked into the game also. With Jax, if I had to guess, he was probably having something really bad going on in his suburban home life. While it may look like a nice neighborhood on the surface, Jax has a lot of troubles, and that probably stems from issues with his family. I don't necessarily think he hurt someone, but Gooseworks did say that out of everyone in the circus, Jax is the one who deserves to be there the most. And at this point, it doesn't seem like the reason for that is that he's hiding some escape from the circus that's keeping everyone else trapped there. So maybe my friend's theory wasn't that far off, and even if Jax isn't the worst person in his family, he still might be the worst person in the group because of what he was willing to do to his family instead of just running away. Either way, Jax did end up running, whether it was because he hurt someone in his home or someone in his home had hurt him and he was done dealing with it. He would presumably stumble upon the same building that everyone else is getting trapped in and end up entering the digital circus, where he would actually have the chance to make friends that he probably didn't have in real life. Friends like Ribbit, Kaufmo, and now even Pomni. But to be honest, with the information we have so far, this isn't making me like Jax any less, and if anything, it's making him a much more sympathetic character who I like even more. Even if he did end up hurting someone in his family, I imagine at this point that it was somewhat motivated by their actions against him, even if Jax wasn't a perfect child to begin with. But what I love about this show is the complexity of all these characters, so let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, as you all always have amazing insights into what these characters might be thinking based off of your own experiences. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out the video we put out yesterday having me react to the new information that the abstractions are caused by Caine. And if you've already seen that one, try and check out one of my big mythology videos that I put out for these other shows. Here on Cartoon Universe, I have a new video that I put out for the Atlantis 2 movie, which is surprisingly deep with real-life lore and connections. But of course, you probably don't want to watch that if you haven't seen our first video breaking down the first Atlantis movie. And then of course, I also have my recent video we put out on our side channel, Random Universe, about Magical Girl Madoka and the real-life secret societies that inspired the show. Links will be popping up right here on the screen in front of you, as well as in the pinned comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time.